The administrative backend is where you manage the security section of the application. And there are really two key elements of this. First is users, and the second is roles. So in the users section is where you can add, edit, and change information about your users. So the more important section we're going to look at is the roles section. So when you initially set up your application, what you want to do is before you create users, you want to create user roles. And then when you add individual people in as users, you can assign them to the roles that you've already defined. So here we have two different roles set up in the system. One for the admin who can manage all of these different aspects of the back end, and then a generic user role. So we click and we can see here's the name of the role, which is user, and then we're going to take a look at permissions. Permissions allows you to really set up two different aspects of your application. One is who can access different levels of the application, and the other is the particular features that you want to enable. Role permissions allow you to do both. So in this case, what we're going to see is all of the different web pages that exist in this application. And I'm going to click here and shrink everything down. These are just all the different pages that are available. Anything that has a check next to it means that this particular role has access, security access, to be able to get to that page. So I am in as an admin, so I'm seeing everything here, but if you'll notice, all of these sections under the administration section are all unchecked. So normally a user, a typical user role, would not have access to any of the administrative backends. Anything that's checked means that the user will be able to go and access those pages. So this is where on the admin side you really have complete control of what your users can do. So let's just take a look at a particular thing. We'll look here at the communication log. So let's say we wanted users to be able to add communication log entries, but not delete them and not edit them. We want them to be able to look at the list of communication logs, but not the summary. So by unchecking those particular things, we're turning off the ability of the user to actually go to those pages at all. The other important thing about this is when you look over here in the sidebar, this is the admin sidebar, which shows a different set of links than the incident sidebar. But if we were in the incident sidebar and we were logged in as a user, if I go down to the bottom of this to the save button and save this, these links, because they're turned off, will no longer show up for the user, the person who is assigned to the user role. So that person doesn't even know that they don't have access to these things because they never show up in the menu. So both in terms of the visibility of the interface, you're able to control what people can see and not see, but also from the security side of things. So if someone actually tried to just type in the link manually up in the URL bar to go to edit a particular record, because they are denied permission, they would not actually be able to go to that page at all. So it's fully secured. And this creates a lot of power for you in your organization to grant access or deny access. This also allows you to turn on or off different features of the application. So let's say that initially you decide that you do not want to use the notification feature at all. You don't want to track notifications made to people in your organization. We can completely turn that off and set that for all the different roles that we've created for our organization, and no one will ever see any of the notification links in the sidebar menu. If somewhere down the line you decide that you'd like to enable that feature, you can decide which roles that you've set up you want to grant access to that feature, and you can turn it on for just those roles. So you can control the left sidebar in the incident section either at the individual role level or across the entire application by turning these things on and off. That's a great way to start with a limited feature set based on the things that you think are important to your organization. And as your needs expand and you decide you want to add additional sort of features within the application, you can go ahead and enable them and they will instantly be available. So before you actually set up your application, one of the things that you need to do initially is to create your initial roles. And you can create as many different roles as you want. You can name them whatever you'd like. And each role can have its own permissions. Then when you add a user, let's say you add Susan as a user, you can go ahead and assign her to the risk manager role that you created. And you've given certain permissions to the risk manager role. If you add Bill in and also add him to the risk manager role, whatever permissions have been granted to the risk manager, Bill will also get. So you only have to create those permissions once for that particular role. If you create a different role, say for instructor, that has a different set of permissions, and you assign Susan to that role as well, so she is both an instructor and a risk manager, she'll have the permissions of both. And those permissions might be slightly different. They might overlap in some ways. So it's really useful to kind of sketch out. We recommend you even just sort of sit down and kind of sketch this out on paper and sort of say, what are the different people that we're going to have access the application? What are the things that we're going to want different people within our organization to do? And therefore, what role should we assign to Susan? What role should we assign to Bill? And which of these things do we want to grant them access to? So these all correspond to all of the different things that appear in the left sidebar. These are all the different things that people can do. And again, you can create permissions to just look at things. So you could turn off, add, delete, and edit, and only allow people to go in and actually view the information. We could set it up so that people could only add information and not view anything after they've done their initial adding. So you have full control over how you manage the security for your staff within your organization and what features you want to use within the application. And to go ahead and save this, we scroll all the way down to the bottom and we would save this and that would automatically be applied. Let's take a look at a sample of editing these permissions and how they reflect out on the rest of the site. So we'll go into the user and I'm going to turn off all of the communication log permissions. For the default user role. Now I'm logged in as an admin, which still has those permissions. So when I take a look here at the sidebar and I click on communications, under communication log, you'll see I still have all of these options. So I've switched to a different browser here and I'm logged in as the user, and I can still see the communications because I left that on, but when I click the drop down, you'll see that all of the communications list, add, summary are gone. So if I went up here and tried to type the URL manually, I still wouldn't be able to get to those pages because permission has been denied. I can still click over here on notification and still see list, add, and summary for notification because those are still enabled for the user role. That gives you an overview of the power of using roles and permissions, both to secure your application by roles in terms of granting permissions to users that are granted specific roles so that they have access to only what you want them to have access to, and also how you can use this to establish the feature set of the application in the way that you want to use it.